Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Haley and you're watching Between the Pages. I am here today with my Outlander source material versus media review. Now, this is going to be a little bit different than most of my other reviews. I am going to talk about the TV show first, and then we'll go into my notes about the book. So there may be a little bit of crossover where I mention something that happened in the TV show that doesn't happen in the book, or something that happens in the book that doesn't happen in the TV show. So it's going to be a little all over the place, a little rambly, but what's new? I am unmedicated for my ADHD, so this is what you're getting today. So first off, I like Claire's husband. He's actually like a pretty nice guy and like really cares about Claire, but I hate his ancestor. His ancestor is horrible. The most horrible human being that you could ever think of. Just the most deplorable human being on the planet. He is so horrible, and I don't see how Claire goes back to her time and like continues to be married to him, knowing what her ancestor has done to her and Jamie. Like, I do not get it. I do not understand. I don't know if it's explained away or anything, because I am only in book 1 and season 1. I have not continued with the series yet, just because this was a lot. It took me about 2 weeks to do this. I love how everything Claire's husband mentions to her, like in the first couple episodes, ends up like helping her and other people around her. Like, he told her at this one rock formation is like where the British used to ambush the Highlanders and everything. And I was like, ah. And then that happens a lot. It kind of gets her, like starts to get her in like a little bit of trouble. But yeah, I was like, I like that she's able to use this knowledge and like she kind of tries to explain it away. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I see why her marriage line is forked, because one of the, I think she's like a servant or a maid or whatever in one of the households, like tells her that her marriage line is forked, and usually it'll be broken up if you're gonna have multiple marriages, but hers like goes like that, which makes sense because she's still married to her husband, but then she's also married to Jamie. So I understand why it was forked. I mean, I went into the TV show knowing a lot of stuff already about it, just from my cursory research. And then at one point, there is a moment where Claire's husband, and I don't know why I keep calling him that. Oh, because Frank, that's his name. If I just glanced a little further down in my notes, I would have known that. It's been a while since I've read this and watched the season 1. But Frank is like coming home or going back to their like Airbnb, bed and breakfast, whatever. Like going back to Claire, and he sees like a Highlander like watching her through the window. And I'm pretty sure it's Jamie, because I know at one point like him and Claire and like their daughter and everything are like time traveling back and forth between the modern timeline and the past. And so I was like, well, maybe it's like the Doctor and River, where Jamie has not gone far enough in the timeline, the modern day timeline, to like find his Claire, and he's like watching a past version, or his past version of the past version of his Claire. Basically, it's very confusing. There's time travel, so it's gonna be all over the place. And so in the TV show, like Claire goes back to Cregnadoon, and she just like randomly goes and touches the stone. And I was like, I don't understand why she's so compelled to touch the stone. It's mentioned that it makes like a humming or a buzzing noise, and I'm like, at that point, like, I'm not fucking touching that thing. That's just me. Maybe I just have a little bit more of self-preservation than she does. But at one point I was like, why are you fucking touching that? Don't touch that. It's making a weird noise. Like, walk away. And it's mentioned more in the book, like why she feels compelled to touch the stone, like the middle stone of Cregnadoon. So I was like, okay, well, I'll let it go. But like, you wouldn't know that if you didn't read the book. It does not make any damn sense why she touches the stone, Because like I said, it's making a weird noise and there's like the wind picks up and there's like a buzzing and I'm like, I'm getting the fuck out of there. Maybe it's because I watch a lot of TV and I read a lot of books. But yeah, I'm not touching no weird stone in the middle of the Scottish Highlands. I'm sorry. I skipped most of the 6th episode because I had already watched it previously before I stopped watching and started reading this. Because that is the episode where basically Black Jack Randall, which is her husband Frank's ancestor, basically monologues for 45 minutes about like all these horrible things that he's done and like all the things he did to Jamie and everything. So I mostly skipped it. I skipped any point where Black Jack Randall was just like monologuing because I'm like, I don't fucking care because I've already watched it once. And I feel like you don't really need to listen to him monologue because he's basically just rehashing things that we're going to find out later in the TV show. But yeah, I skipped most of the 6th episode because I was like, I don't care. And then at one point, Dougal like comes on to Claire and I was like, Dougal, you better back the fuck up. Like, I know that you are Jamie's uncle, but I'm pretty sure he'd still beat the shit out of you if you were coming on to his wife. So yeah, I didn't like that. At one point, I don't know what this is in regards to, but I just put, well, they're not wrong. Claire is with Jamie of her own volition. Take that as you will. I don't remember why I wrote that down. And then Frank, like he keeps going to the police station and the police station being like, you saw a guy looking up at your wife. She was probably having an affair. She probably just left you. Like, it happens every day. Like, we're not going to keep investigating this because there's no evidence that she was taken, you know, against her will or anything. And that might have been why I wrote that down, that she is with Jamie of her own volition. So she wasn't taken by Jamie. That may have been why I wrote that down. But yeah, I was like, he gets ready to leave Scotland and he's just like, he literally walks out and like leaves her stuff sitting on the bed. And I'm like, why would you not take her stuff with you? Like, why would you not want to take your wife's like clothes and jewelry and personal effects? Why would you just leave them in Scotland? Like, it made no sense. And then at one point, Claire and Frank are both like on opposite sides of Craig Nadoon at the same time. And she starts to hear the buzzing noise and she's like about to touch the stone. And like they can basically hear each other yelling each other's names. And I was like, okay, like I love Jamie, I do. And I like Frank in a totally different way. But I was like, this is all tragically romantic. Because I'm like, I kind of want her to go back and be with Frank, but at the same time, I want her to stay with Jamie. So I was very conflicted, but I was like, this is very tragically romantic. And I'm like, I'm into this because I like my romance a little bit tragic. And then I had a question. I was like, so if someone kills Randall, does that mean that Frank doesn't exist in the future? Because I know in the books, before Black Jack Randall is killed, he does have like a son or a child. I don't know if it's specified what gender it is, but he does end up having a child, which is obviously how we get Frank. It's not implied in the TV show at all whether or not he's had a child already. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, but because he's like a horrible human being and like likes to force himself on women. So I would not be surprised if that's how we end up like finding out that he has a kid. It's also highly implied that he's killed at the end of season 1, but you never see a body. So nobody, no crime, you know what I'm saying? So maybe he's still alive. I don't know. I'll probably find out in season 2 or season 3. I'm not sure. And then at one point, Claire basically thinks that Colum's son is actually Dougal's son because Colum has Toulouse-Lautrec syndrome, which like causes his his legs to bow out and like be very skinny and have like no muscle definition whatsoever. So he's basically like walking with like skeleton legs, basically. I don't know. It's really hard to explain unless you like have seen a picture or you know about that. But it can render men to be like infertile and like sterile. So it's highly implied throughout the whole entire season that Colum's son is not his son. In the book, she does theorize that maybe he's Jamie's son. He's not. He's Dougal's son. So Dougal slept with Colum's wife to basically give him an heir. So technically, Dougal's son is the heir to Clan Mackenzie, since he's not Colum's biological son. And then at one point, Claire basically tells Jamie to go sleep on the couch. In that version, because at one point she like disobeys him, so he beats her because he doesn't understand like why she was running away and like trying to get to Craig Nadoon, and why she didn't listen to what he told her. So he basically beats her, and she's like, you will never touch me again. So she basically tells him to go sleep on the couch. He ends up sleeping on the floor, but basically that time period's equivalent of you're sleeping on the couch, you don't even fucking touch me. And then it's funny how Gaelus's situation is going to mirror, or how Claire's situation is going to mirror Gaelus's, because Gaelus is basically from our time, like a modern, like she's from like 1965, I think, and she gets sent back and like gets pregnant by another man. And so basically, like, that's what happens with Claire. Like, she gets sent back in time, gets pregnant with Jamie's child, ends up time traveling back to, you know, our time, and like having her baby then. And is basically, that baby is raised by Frank. Spoilers. I don't know what season or what book that is. I just know what I've seen from the internet in my cursory research of this series. And then Murda, I think is how you pronounce it. They end up like being really close friends, which it's funny because in the book, like, Murda like does not like Claire at all. And then it's also implied that Murda was in love with Jamie's mother. There's another character you find out was in love with Jamie's mother, so everybody was in love with Jamie's mother at one point in time. Maybe that's why everybody loves Jamie. And there's just a lot of stuff with Dougal. I do not like Dougal. I don't care. He does end up losing his wife, who is maybe or maybe not been cursed or poisoned by Gaelus, so her and Dougal can be together. One of my friends did imply that Dougal's story ends up getting even more tragic, and she's like, I don't understand how you can't like Dougal. Like, he goes through a lot of shit, and I'm like, I don't like Dougal. Graham McTavish, love that man. I love the actor playing Dougal, because I loved him in The Hobbit. He played Dwalin, I think. The big buff one. And he was like basically like the muscle of, you know, the dwarves. I realize it's very niche, but I love the Hobbit films. I love Graham McTavish. He plays Dougal perfectly. I just don't like the character. Love the actor though. Love him. And then they basically storm the castle or the prison where Jamie is being held with Highland cows. How very Scottish. And it was hilarious. I was like, oh my god, please tell me they're not going to do what I think they're going to do. They did. They stormed the castle or the prison with Highland cows. It was great. Really great. So that is the TV show part. Now we are going to get into the book. And there are a lot. The TV show does follow the book pretty faithfully. There's just there's like little itty bitty details that were changed. And I guess I can see why they were changed, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know why you would change that, because it seems like it was a really big deal. So in the book, it is mentioned that Frank was actually a spook, which for people who have not seen MI5, it's MI5, isn't it? Yeah, MI5. It's a British TV show about like British intelligence. They call them spooks. So again, a little niche reference for people who have seen that TV show. But yeah, because it's implied in the TV show that he is part of British intelligence, but it's never mentioned which intelligence agency he worked for. And so basically they mention it. I don't remember what the like phrasing was, but I was like, oh, so he wasn't MI6. Because like people know who MI6 is. At least I'm pretty sure people in like Britain would know who MI6 is. Maybe a lot of people wouldn't know what MI5 was, but it's basically a British intelligence agency, kind of like FBI, CIA over here. And then it's also mentioned that, because in the beginning of the TV show, Claire is walking by a glassware shop, I guess. I don't know, like a housewares place. And she mentions that she had never had an occasion to have a vase because they've been through, you know, World War II? World War One? Whichever one took place around 1943. I'm not good with wars and history and things like that because I don't care about that era of history, really. But she mentions that, like, maybe if I had bought the vase, maybe, you know, something different would have happened. But she bought the vases in the book. So I don't really understand why that was changed. I didn't feel like a lot of my notes and stuff are like very nitpicky because I was like, well, I have to find something to say in my book section. In the book, it takes place at Beltane instead of Samhain, which I guess makes sense because like Beltane is also one of the Celtic fire festivals, I believe, if my occult and witchy knowledge is correct. I don't really celebrate Beltane, but we're not going to get into that right now. But Samhain is basically Halloween and Beltane is May Day, for those who don't know about that. Which it makes sense because it's said that at both Beltane and Samhain, the veil is more thin. Although I think from what I've researched, at least in modern day, it's implied that like at Beltane, it's more like the veil is thinnest for like sprites and fairies and like spirits of that kind. And then at Samhain, it's more like spirits of the dead, which would make sense because it takes place on Samhain in the TV show. So going back to what I said about perhaps Jamie's ghost or Jamie, you know, messing with the timeline, went back to see Claire, it would make sense that Jamie would be a ghost at that point because it takes place at Samhain. Whereas in the book, it's highly implied that like Craignadoon is like basically a fairy circle. And there's a lot of stuff about fairies and everything because we are in Scotland. And it's very prevalent like in their folklore and stuff is fairies and the wee folk and everything like that. Can you tell I'm very passionate about occult things and things like that? But it would make sense for the book, I guess. But again, I was like, okay, I see why you would flip those two festivals. Just a little nitpick, in my opinion. Also, most of the dialogue is pulled directly from the book because there were a lot of instances where I was like, oh, they used that line. Oh, they used that line. They used that line. So it is very faithful to book dialogue. There is a lot of book dialogue in the film or TV show. Sorry, I'm used to doing film versions of these. And so I didn't highlight, I didn't annotate. We didn't do like Twilight style. I wasn't underlining or anything. I took note because I would watch a couple of episodes and then I would read the corresponding chapters, and that's how I did it. And when Claire meets Jamie, not only is his shoulder dislocated, but he's also got a gunshot wound because in the TV show, he has a dislocated shoulder. They get ambushed by the British and then he gets shot in the shoulder. So I think in the book, like after the British attack, he gets like a bayonet wound. So like he's been stabbed by a bayonet. But again, a little nitpick. And then when they go to the hall and Mrs. Fitzgibbon's granddaughter Larry or Laurie, I don't know. They all have Scottish names. I'm sorry. I'm American. so I'm not very good at pronunciations or anything like that. It's Miss Fitzgibbons explaining everything to Claire, like what everyone is saying, because they're all speaking in Highlander, Scottish, Gaelic, Gallic. Again, I'm American. I'm sorry. A lot of this is going to be because I'm American. I don't know how to pronounce things. Because it's supposed to be Galus explaining everything to her. And I was like, where's Galus? Like, please tell me Galus is a character, because I fucking love Galus in the TV show. Hands down, one of my favorite characters. But, and then like I said in my TV section of this review, it's highly implied that she thinks that Hamish is Jamie's. He's not. Hamish is Colum's son. I actually wrote his name down in my notes. That he's actually Dougal's son instead of Colum's. But she thinks for the longest time that Jamie might be Hamish's father. He's not. There's no possession subplot in the book, which makes me wonder where that came from. Because in the TV show, it's implied that these two boys have been possessed by the devil because they went and stayed overnight in some type of like ruin or whatever, and they say that they've been cursed by the devil, and like so the priest comes to do an exorcist on them. It turns out that they've actually just eaten something they shouldn't, and they were actually poisoned. So I don't know if that subplot was used to show that Claire is actually very knowledgeable with plants and, you know, antidotes and medicines and things like that. I don't know where the possession subplot came from. I don't know if that's a subplot used in later books and they just used it for season 1. I don't know, because I've only read one of the books. But, because I could see them doing that. Because there were a couple things in Umbrella Academy, seasons 1 and 2, that were taken from different different books in the series, and were like basically like flip-flopped seasons. You can go watch my Umbrella Academy reviews if you want to know more about that. But yeah, so I'm not sure where the possession subplot came from. Claire comes to the fact that they are Jacobites because they want King James, I think, of Scotland to like be the ruler of the throne, I think. Again, I don't know much about European history around this time. I am more knowledgeable in the Tudor and Elizabethan eras, not so much this point in history. But in the TV show, for the longest time, she thinks that like Dougal is trying to like usurp Colum and like get money from their kinsmen, or whatever. I don't remember what they're called, but they have to like go and like collect rents and stuff like that. And for the longest time, Claire thinks that they're like basically stealing from Colum, until she hears like Dougal say something and she's like, oh, they're actually Jacobites. Where she comes to that conclusion a lot quicker in the book. And I'm like, did we just need drama for the TV show? Because they drug it out for like a whole entire episode. And I think in the book, she comes to this conclusion in like maybe 2 pages. So it's kind of implied that book Claire is a lot smarter than TV Claire, but I don't know. Dougal tells Jamie's story instead of Randall, about him being whipped and everything by Randall and everything that happened with Jenny. It kind of fit more that Dougal would be telling the story because he was there, like as Jamie was being whipped, and like told her the story about the death of Jamie's father, because it's implied that, well, Jamie's father was there while Jamie was being whipped, and so it's implied that the shock of seeing his son and like being basically horribly, horribly abused and punished caused him to have a heart attack or a stroke, and that's how he died. So Jamie blames himself a lot for the death of his father. So it makes more sense that Dougal's telling the story instead of Blackjack Randall. I think we just needed drama. Jamie gives Claire his mother's pearls before they get married, whereas in the TV show, he gives them to her like after they get married, when they're in their like wedding chamber. I think it's like prior to them consummating their marriage and everything. But again, it's a tiny little nitpick. And then I like this little nod to the sequel. So when they go and meet like Jamie's friend who does not have a tongue because it was cut out for whatever reason, I don't remember why. She mentions that he gives her like a piece of amber that has a dragonfly in it, and like a dragonfly in amber is what the sequel's called. It's also in the TV show, but I just like that little nod because I feel like it's planting seeds for the sequel. Again, I don't know when I'm gonna read the sequel because, like I said, this took me about 2 weeks to do all of these notes and read and flip back and forth. So I don't know when I'm gonna read the sequel because this book about took me out. And then it's highly implied that Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, is actually real. It's highly implied that Nessie is real, so take that as you may. Claire and Jamie's confrontation happens on the road instead of at Castle Leoch. This is the confrontation that I was mentioning, that she didn't listen to what he said and it ended up getting her kidnapped and they had to go rescue her. And by her not listening to him, she put everybody in danger, and so he basically beats her. And so that happens on the road instead of when they get back to Castle Leoch. Again, a little nitpick. So that's also when Claire gets her wedding ring, is when they return back to Castle Leoch, where in the TV show, she gets it prior to them getting married. It's one of the many errands that Jamie makes two of Dougal's like henchmen basically go do for him. So he'll marry Claire. And when Claire and Galus end up being taken in for the crime of witchcraft, or being accused of being witches, in the TV show, Jamie is not there at Castle Leoch or in the village because he has been banished. Well, Dougal has been banished because of his whole thing with his wife and Galus being pregnant with his baby and everything. Whereas in the book, it is Jamie goes on the stag hunt with everybody, which is weird because Claire goes on the stag hunt with everybody in the TV show, if I'm remembering correctly. A lot of these ran into each other and like kind of changed the order of certain things. Claire finds out that Galus is pregnant while they're waiting in the pit for their trial, whereas in the TV show, Claire finds out that Galus is pregnant because she goes to find Galus in the woods, and she's like doing a ritual that may or may not have resulted in the death of Dougal's wife. And she notices that she's pregnant because like her belly is kind of like distended, I guess, but like she doesn't look like she's very far along. Again, I've never had kids, so I'm not very well versed in, the stages of pregnancy, but she looks like she might be like 4 or 5 months or along, maybe 6 months at the most. But it's like very noticeable that she's pregnant. Jamie knows the Odyssey. Like they end up having a conversation about the Odyssey, and I just like that because I like the Odyssey. I'm obsessed with the Odyssey and Epic the Musical and just like anything to do with Greek mythology. So I thought that was really cool. When they go to, oh my God, I can't remember. Wherever Jamie's like ancestral house is for the Frasers, I can't remember the name, and it's like said so many times and now I feel like an idiot. At one point the British show up and it's supposed to be Jenny. Well, in the TV show it's Jenny sitting next to her when the British show up, and then in the book it's some other lady of the house who like helps out, like a maid or a servant or something like that. Again, just a little nitpick. Jenny seems a lot nicer in the book, just saying. They made her a bitch in the TV show. I do not like TV show Jenny at all. I do not like her. she's not very nice to Claire. She's not very nice to Jamie. I'm like, I get it. You're mad because your brother left you and like you had no idea whether he was dead or not. And like him being there basically puts a price on everybody's head. But like you could be a little bit nicer to your brother that you thought was dead this entire time. Just saying. Jenny goes into labor before the Watch show up because in the TV show, Jamie is gone with the Watch when Jenny goes into labor. It does end up being a breech baby, so coming out head first instead of feet first. No, coming out feet first instead of head first. Again, never had a kid. Not well versed in pregnancy or anything. So, sorry if I misspoke. They actually have a midwife, and it's not just Claire delivering it by herself. In the TV show, like, Claire is the only person there because they can't get the midwife there for whatever reason. I think it's like the midwife was like out of town or something. So Claire is the one who has to deliver the baby. She is a war nurse. I don't think she was delivering a lot of babies, you know, during wartime, but who knows, maybe. But yeah. And then the Watch takes Jamie instead of the British. And then like the Watch basically like takes him to the British and is like, here's your prisoner. Can we please get a reward now? Because he has a price on his head. And Dougal comes back, but he still wants to marry Claire. So, because basically, since Claire is married to Jamie, if Jamie were to die, she would then inherit Jamie's estates and everything. So basically, Dougal wants to marry Claire so he can have control of Jamie, the Fraser estate, basically, and like her money and everything. Fucking hate Dougal. Do not like him. I'm so glad we didn't have to watch Jamie be tortured. Because, oh my Lord, the last couple episodes of season 1 almost broke me. Like, almost broke me like they broke Jamie. Because, oh my God, watching Jamie be, like, beaten by Randall and having a nail, like, nailed through his hand and, like, everything that Randall ends up doing to Jamie nearly broke me. Because, oh my God, Sam Hugan, who plays Jamie, I really hope he won an Emmy. I don't know, I've never looked it up, but I really hope he won an Emmy for his role as Jamie. Because, oh my God, I felt it. I was so glad I didn't have to hear or see that again, because it damn well scarred me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to watch the end of season 1 again. Honestly, it was just so difficult to watch. Claire splints Jamie's wrist before they go to the monastery, because they go to a monastery like in France, whereas in the TV show they take him to like the monastery where I think he was like, he grew up or was educated or whatever, and then they get on a ship to go to France, because that's where King James currently is, and they're going to try and stop the Jacobites from losing their cause, basically. And so I also did appreciate that Jamie's not fucking catatonic, because he is catatonic in season 1. Like, he comes back from the prison and he like will not speak to Claire. He's like, does not want Claire to touch him. Does like basically is starving himself because he doesn't think he's like worthy of living anymore. I think it's also implied in the TV show that when him and Jack Randall were together, like maybe he kind of liked it, or it could also have been like because he's a victim. And I know a lot of victims are like, well, maybe I liked it because my body reacted, you know, in a pleasurable way. Like, you know what happens when someone has sex. So I don't know if it's because I know there's another character who comes in later that's like Lord John, and I think my friend implied that like him and Jamie and Claire have like a poly, like a throuple thing going on. Again, I don't know if that's true. I've not gotten that far, but that's just what I have thought by what she's told me, basically. Words are hard. Jamie is awake when Claire is setting his fingers, where in the TV show, I think they like get him drunk or someone knocks him out or something so he doesn't have to feel the pain again, because oof, it was gory. And then, so it's implied that in the book that they're going to go to Rome instead of going to France because they're already in France, because the monastery is in France. And I was like, so are we going to Rome in the next book? I don't know. And then also, they don't know if Randall's really dead. So I don't know if Randall's really dead in the TV show either. I guess we'll find out. But that was my incredibly rambly review for Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. It's Gabaldon. Figured that out thanks to the audiobook. I also do not like the audiobook narrator, but I knew that that was the only way I was going to get through this book, is if I listened to the audiobook. So would not recommend the audiobook. I would say don't read the book unless you really like the TV series, because there were a lot of times where like nothing really happened and I was like, great, I'm so bored right now. So yeah, I would not recommend this unless you are already a fan of the TV show. Same with the True Blood books. Don't read them unless you like the TV show already. But yeah, that is my incredibly rambly review, and I will see y'all later.